Our webinar today is entitled Customer Case Leveraging SAP PPM 5 for Product Registration at Welch Allyn. This webinar will discuss how Welch Allyn, a worldwide medical device manufacturer who focuses on helping frontline medical practitioners work more effectively and efficiently with their patients at the point of care, leveraged SAP Portfolio and Project Management version 5 for product registration. The webinar will also include a discussion of how Welch Allyn addressed the increasing complexity of meeting global regulatory and trade compliance demands, the benefits achieved from first phase of the implementation, lessons learned, and the next steps for their PPM implementation at Welch Allyn. My name is Alan Mendel, Vice President at LeverX, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Before we begin our topic for today's webinar, let me briefly introduce you to LeverX. LeverX assists companies increase business value by leveraging existing investments in SAP solutions. LeverX is an SAP services partner, an associate member of the PLM Alliance. LeverX delivers strategic, functional, and technical services in the areas of SAP Product Lifecycle Management, Portfolio and Project Management, and related solutions. We offer services for business, process, and strategic consulting, solution architecture development, implementation planning and execution, application management support, and on-site and remote delivery models. We are pleased to introduce our presenter for today's webinar, Richard Thomas, Senior Business Applications Manager with Welch Allyn. Our agenda will proceed as outlined. We will first hear from Richard, leveraging SAP Project and Portfolio Management 5 for product registration at Welch Allyn, and then we'll open up the webinar to questions. If you think of a question during Richard's presentation, please enter that in the GoToWebinar question box, and we will try to address all questions at the end of this presentation. We'll now turn the presentation over to Richard.
All right, good morning. Hello, everyone. Richard Thomas here from the Welch Allyn Corporation. I'm going to speak to you a little bit about what we did using SAP's Portfolio and Project Management System for product registration. A little bit about Welch Allyn. As already indicated, we're we specialize in manufacturing medical equipment primarily for the frontline medical practitioner, doctors, nurses, frontline service providers in the medical industry. We have a broad spectrum of products that we deliver, including ophthalmoscopes, otoscopes, blood pressure gauges, cuffs, and a variety of other monitoring devices that are used primarily for diagnostic medical use. We're a worldwide company. We sell products throughout the world with our primary corporate headquarters in upstate New York, just outside Syracuse, New York, in Skaneateles, New York. So I'm going to go step by step through those various processes and talk about how we use PPM to meet those specific process goals. Again, I mentioned that we wanted to standardize our process steps. We had looked closely at the process, and we broke it down into 4 key steps. We have what we refer to as the delivery preparation. We're preparing to make a submission. Then we do a final submission preparation. That is, we assemble all the appropriate documentation that needs to be submitted to an agency. And we put it into the proper format so that we can then submit it to the agency in the format they expect. We then have a step for agency review. When you submit to an agency like the FDA or the DQS in Europe, there's time that is elapsed. It may be several weeks, even longer, while they review your information and ask questions about it before they'll actually come back and give you approval to sell that product. And then lastly, after we've received our agency approval, we have to go through what we refer to as a launch preparation phase, where we need to finalize all of our documentation for the product, put it in the country, the language of the country we're going to sell it in, all of our directions for use, extend the bill of material and information to the appropriate manufacturing plant, to the sales organization, so they can then begin to sell it. So we have a launch preparation phase. We used PPM in its ability to map out specific decision points within an item so that we could clearly define each one of our phases. We standardize on each one of the items and projects using the PPM templates. Now you'll hear me talk about PPM templates frequently here because the capabilities of PPM to define what we refer to as project and item templates allows us to institutionalize our best practices so that we can set up these projects and repeat them over and over again. So we use templates extensively within the PPM system. And then lastly, I mentioned we have project phases that define the work activities and the expected deliverables at each phase. Along the bottom of the screen here, I just have a quick snippet of the PPM system, and you can see how the various phases map out along the bottom there with delivery preparation, then a milestone of deliverables completed, submission preparation, and the milestone of submitted to agency and so forth. It's very nice how you can take your process steps and map it directly into PPM so it's clearly visible and you can monitor the progress. The next thing we wanted to focus on is we clearly wanted to define the requirements for each process step. So as an example, as shown here on the left-hand side of the screen, we have an initial phase of deliverable preparation. And within PPM, we defined a whole series of checklist items that must be delivered in order to clear that particular phase of the project. You can see some of them are called standards listing for device must comply, trade name of the device, end item submission to be end item SKUs to be submitted, etc. Behind each one of these checklist items is one or more documents that must be created, released, approved, and associated with the checklist item before this item can be completed. This then defines all of the requirements as we understand it for a submission to a certain country in the deliverable preparation phase, and that becomes our best practices for submission. So as I said here in the checklist items, we use checklist templates to define our deliverables. Again, the word templates, we're using templates within PPM extensively. We have links to what we refer to as RA websites to provide supporting details, so that if someone needs to know, well, what am I supposed to put together when I'm putting together the manufacturer's site name and address, as an example, we have a website that's linked to that particular checklist item that provides additional background information about what should be produced and what needs to be provided. For each checklist item, we assign a responsible person. That responsible person is required to complete that checklist item, and they will also be periodically reminded via a little mail program that we put together. They'll be reminded via email that they have a checklist item that they need to work on and when the delivery date is expected on that. We have set up regular alerts for open checklist items. And then lastly, as the deliverables are completed, they're usually checked into SAP as a DIR, and those DIRs are then linked to each particular checklist item so that the project manager can monitor those particular items as they progress from initial preparation to completion. The next thing we want to do is make sure we define alerts and red flags to focus on critical path items. PPM does a nice job of providing you with what's referred to as severity icons, and we leverage those within the project. You can see some of the examples of those here against the checklist items. And you can see how each one of those icons, being that there may be green, red, yellow, or a different shape, has a meaning within our definition of this project, and they would give some alert to the project manager as well as others as to what the status of each one of those items is. Clearly, in our case, we're focused on things that might be yellow, meaning that they're coming due shortly and may not have been completed. And obviously, I don't think there's an icon here for it, but there's an icon that indicates that something is late relative to the original plan. And that would go into I think it's a red square that people can focus on and determine if that particular item is off schedule, what we're going to do about that. Wanted to point out that we linked the documents, the DIRs, to the checklist items, and then we linked the status of the DIR to the severity of the checklist item so that we have a direct one-to-one relationship between the work that's being done to create the file and getting it approved and the severity of the checklist item itself. That's a little program that we had developed for this purpose.